Hello. It's Ascension Day, and in the Anglican Catholic Church we celebrate it, as has traditionally been the case, on a Thursday. And we find ourselves standing and looking up. There is a particular psychosomatic theory, which I think has some very good scientific basis behind it, that if one looks up, it helps one to feel more positive. Just as smiling can help one feel happy. It's a quirk of the brain, apparently. And so, at the Ascension, we are told to look up, and we see our Lord ascend into heaven and leave us behind. He doesn't leave us alone, but his body ascends into heaven, and that doesn't mean to say he shoots off into space like some kind of rocket. That's not what the text says. It says clouds obscured him. And so he disappears from view. His body goes into, I suppose, some strange existence that's neither what we understand as time and space, into God's own time and space. But we look up, and in looking up we find ourselves enheartened. We are enheartened by the angel saying, as you see him go into heaven, so will you see him come down again from heaven. And so we will be, Christians are staring up into the clouds, hoping one day that we will see that bright shining figure descend from heaven once more. Looking up means hope. However, in order to look up and to get that hope, we have to have our feet firmly planted on the ground. What does that mean? Well, it means we're not going to get to heaven by rocket or aeroplane or by getting off the ground. We have to remain on the ground. Our feet have to be firmly planted. There's an old phrase that's often used to criticise some members of the clergy, that feet on the ground but head in the clouds. Essentially, that's what we're supposed to be. The other phrase is that so heavenly minded is no earthly use. I think I can think of certain members of the clergy who could fit that, but don't tell the bishop I said that. No, all clergy have an earthly use, and that's the whole point. So heavenly minded is a wonderful thing to be, because to be heavenly minded means to have earthly use. Why? To be heavenly minded is to fix one's heart and one's thinking upon Christ. It is to deny oneself the supremacy of one's own thinking. We cease to be we cease to be in charge of our own selves. We abdicate that to the rightful owner, which is God. It means we have to be humble, and there we see the feet on the ground for humble humiliation. All have to deal with a humus, which is, of course, the ground. We have to be grounded. To be earthly minded means to be grounded. When people say heavenly minded, no earthly use, what they're essentially saying is that they don't help in this physical world. That may be true. And it might be true because people are too materialist. They see this world as the only thing that exists, despite the fact that, well, we've got eyewitness testimony of our Lord ascending to heaven. We have an eyewitness testimony of the Lord rising from the dead, or being raised from the dead. We don't actually see the resurrection, but we see the effects. On Saturday, Christ is dead. On Sunday, Christ is alive. So, we must learn to be heavenly minded, and that means not to regard our earthly selves as being in any way, shape or form deficient. It means we are not just earthly selves. We are not just things for earthly use. We stand with our feet on the ground and we look up to heaven. And we look for Christ. And that is the Church's witness, to be there, ready to point and say, there he is descending from heaven once more. To look up gives hope, and hope raises the spirits. And though our feet remain on the ground, we are faced with the fact that this life is not just as we see it. There is more to it. As I say, this life is not deficient. It is to be caught up in eternity, just as our Lord took manhood, not destroying it, but taking it up. He emptied himself, as St. Paul says to the Philippians. So our earthly lives are not meaningless. They're not to be snubbed. What is to be checked, though, is the lust of the flesh, which is at war with what the Spirit wants. For the lust of the flesh is the uncontrolled wants. Lust isn't always sexual. Lust for power, we might say. It's an uncontrolled, unbridled passion for something. And that's why it's against the Spirit, because the Spirit reminds us that we are bound to the ground by virtue of being human. We are subject to gravity. And that's because we have a body. God has given us a body. we are not to hate the body at all. No. That way lies Gnosticism. What we must do is to remember that we must train the body to make sure that it is subservient to the heavenly mind. So, we stand on the ground and we look up, and sometimes we have to force ourselves to look up. For the person who is depressed looks down to the ground, and it takes an effort to lift one's head when the weight of the world is on one's shoulders. Those who suffer from depression, it's a real thing. They are to be listened to and cherished, and somehow encouraged to lift their head up towards Christ. And it's a struggle we all have. A struggle to raise our heads when the weight of the world is upon us, and the struggle to keep our feet on the ground when we are related with pride and overcome by the lusts of the flesh. We stand on the ground and we look up and we watch Christ ascend, and we know that that is where we belong. He goes to prepare a place for us. So this Ascension tide, God bless you. God bless you if you are anyway suffering from depression, if you are suffering from any weight of turbulence caused by unwanted passions. God bless you if you are tired and weary, and God give you strength to look up and feel His hope and know His love. God bless you richly, and please pray for me.